Hello, товарищ. I'm Yuri. Today we will going to talk about the Titanic, which as you know sank. Here in Mother Russia we have more than enough information about everything, because we have radio. It's far more useful than the internet, which besides memes and cats bombards you with arguments, ads for useless stuff and endless news, which either makes you laugh or grab your suitcase. Let's start.
The concept of the Titanic was developed in a hotel. Bruce Ismay, director of White Star Line, and William J. Peary, general manager of Harland & Wolff, formulated the idea for the Titanic during a lunch at a London hotel. The Titanic was built in Belfast, Northern Ireland, at the Harland & Wolff shipyard. At the time, it was the largest shipbuilding facility in the world. The construction of the Titanic took over 26 months. Approximately 15,000 workers were involved in the process. The construction of the Titanic required 3 million rivets, most of which were handmade. The designers considered the liner unsinkable. A double bottom and 16 watertight bulkheads were cutting-edge technology for the time. However, the designers did not anticipate how destructive an iceberg could be. The Titanic's hull was divided into 16 watertight compartments designed to keep the ship afloat, even if 4 of them were flooded. However, the collision with an iceberg damaged 5 compartments. The Titanic was equipped with 10 decks, roughly equivalent to the height of an 11-story building. It was the largest ship of its time. Its length was 882.9 feet, and its height was 174.9 feet. The Titanic was not the only large liner on the White Star Line. The ship Olympic began construction at the same time as the Titanic. In 1911, during its 11th voyage, the Olympic collided with the British cruiser Hawke. The latter miraculously stayed afloat, while the Olympic sustained minor damage. The Titanic's younger sibling, the ship Britannic, was originally intended to be named Gigantic. But after the Titanic's disaster, the builders tempered their ambitions. The Britannic was the most comfortable of the 3 ships. It had 2 barbershops, a children's playroom, and a gymnasium for second-class passengers. Unfortunately, passengers never fully experienced the ship's amenities. After the outbreak of war, it was converted into a hospital ship and soon struck a mine off the coast of Greece. However, most people on board were safe. To launch the ship, 23 tons of tallow, locomotive oil, and liquid soap were used to lubricate the slipways. An unused ticket to the Titanic's launch ceremony sold at a London auction for $56,300,000. A menu from the ship listing 40 dishes was sold in New York for $31,300. Another such menu fetched £76,000 in London. Keys for a ship's compartment where lanterns for lifeboats were stored also survived and were sold for £59,000. The Titanic had 2 radio stations. One operated around the clock, while the other was a backup. The Titanic was equipped with a modern Marconi communication system, allowing passengers to send telegrams and receive news from the outside world, despite being at sea. The Titanic consumed 600 tons of coal per day to operate. There were live cows on board of the Titanic, used to provide fresh milk for first-class passengers. The Titanic was armed, but the weapons were never used. It was equipped with 20-pound signal cannons and 4 machine guns. The Titanic had over 40 different types of cabins, including shared dormitories and private suites with their own promenade decks. Legends about the Titanic still persist. For example, mysticism enthusiasts point out that in 1998, writer Morgan Robertson penned the novel Futility, about a massive transatlantic liner and its smug passengers. The story has striking similarities, such as the ship's name, Titan, and its collision with an iceberg on a cold April night.
My grandfather also had prophetic abilities, and as soon as he saw the Titanic, He immediately said it would sink. He shouted and tried to warn everyone, but in the end he was beaten up and thrown out of the movie theater.
The Titanic had a three-class passenger accommodation system consisting of first, second, and third classes, each offering a level of comfort that met the high standards of its time. The cost of a first-class ticket could reach $4,350, equivalent to approximately 100,000 modern dollars when adjusted for inflation. There were many entertainment options on board the Titanic, including a gymnasium, a swimming pool, a library, high-class restaurants, and even a Turkish bath. The ship's crew aimed to create an atmosphere of luxury and comfort. There were only 20 lifeboats on board, capable of accommodating 1,178 passengers and crew members. Despite the ship being designed to carry up to 3,547 people, the White Star Line management decided to reduce the number of lifeboats to avoid spoiling the deck's appearance. There were 4 storage vaults on board of the Titanic for wealthy passengers, where jewelry and money were kept. However, after the disaster, most of these valuables were never recovered. The Titanic's final port of departure was the city of Southampton, England, from where it embarked on its first and last voyage on April 10, 1912. All third-class passengers underwent a medical examination before boarding to prevent the spread of diseases such as typhus and lice. Those who failed the inspection were departed back. The Titanic lacked something as simple as binoculars. The captain dismissed his second officer, Blair, who took the keys to the safe where the binoculars for the lookouts were stored. On the morning of April 14 in 1912, crews of other liners sent the Titanic at least 6 warnings about icebergs near its route. The last message arrived 40 minutes before the collision, but the Titanic's radio operator cut off the communication without listening to it fully. All warnings were either ignored or not taken seriously. On the night of April 14, the weather was unusually calm. Clear skies, no wind, and good visibility. This made the collision with an iceberg even more bizarre and unexpected. At 23:40 ship's time, the Titanic struck an iceberg while moving at a speed of 22 knots, which is about 25 miles per hour. Only 30 seconds passed from the moment the lookout spotted the iceberg to the impact. After the collision, the ship remained afloat for 2 hours and 40 minutes. The iceberg that the Titanic collided with rose 30 meters above the water, roughly the height of a 10-story building. Its underwater portion was even larger, causing fatal damage to the ship's hull. The rescue operation was conducted in complete chaos. Due to a shortage of lifeboats and a lack of clear instructions, many lifeboats were launched half empty. Some crew members prohibited men from boarding, even when there were enough seats. Meanwhile, there was only one person on board specially trained to manage lifeboats, but he didn't participate in the rescue. Many passengers refused to abandon the ship, believing in the myth of its unsinkability. This was one of the reasons for the enormous loss of life. More than 1,500 people perished. Margaret Molly Brown, a millionaire and feminist who spoke 5 languages and swore fluently in them, helped seat people in lifeboats but was reluctant to evacuate herself. She had to be forcibly placed on a boat. On the Carpathia, she organized aid for survivors, raising $10,000 for them. Benjamin Guggenheim, the businessman, put his companion in a lifeboat, then changed into a tuxedo, sat in the hall with a glass of whiskey, and said, "We are prepared to die as gentlemen." Captain Edward Smith perished on his final voyage before retirement. 2 small dogs survived because their owners took them into lifeboats. The other animals, including exotic ones transported in the holds, perished. The Titanic carried 900 tons of cargo, automobiles, jewelry, and mail. Most of it remained at the bottom of the ocean. The majority of kitchen workers were Asians, serving the third class. Almost all of them died.
Curious, but I tell you this. If the Titanic has been Soviet, the iceberg would have surrendered first.
The bulk of the passengers were migrants heading to America for a new life. The Titanic sent an SOS, one of the first in history. Previously, the CQD signal was used. The Carpathia received it, but arrived only after 4 hours, when most had already died from the cold in the water. The ship sank 373 miles southeast of Newfoundland. Due to the remote location, help arrived too late. The disaster claimed over 15,000 lives, making it one of the deadliest peacetime maritime tragedies in history. After the disaster, numerous new safety laws and regulations were enacted, including the mandatory provision of enough lifeboats for all passengers on board. The location of the sunken Titanic remained unknown for over 70 years. Russian deep-sea submersibles Mir dove to the wreck in 1991 and 1995, located at a depth of 2.36 miles. They captured footage that was used in James Cameron's famous film. This year, in honor of the centenary of the liner's sinking, our divers promised to return to the Titanic. UNESCO waited 100 years to declare the Titanic wreck a cultural heritage site. They have a special convention for such cases. Now UNESCO will ensure that artifacts from the Titanic don't fall into the hands of unscrupulous divers. The film Titanic 3D grossed an impressive $17.4 million in the USA. James Cameron's '97 Titanic was a phenomenal success, earning a staggering $1.8 billion. The fateful black iceberg, or rather its photograph, was discovered 90 years after the Titanic's sinking. A few days after the tragedy, a certain Stefan Reharek from Bohemia, sailing on another liner, passed by the disaster site and photographed the iceberg. After thorough analysis, it was proven that the dents on the iceberg could have been caused by a ship, so the ice block suffered too. Jack Dawson, the hero of the film that brought Cameron fame and fortune, was a real person. However, Cameron later claimed he picked the name randomly and that it was a coincidence. Nevertheless, the real Jack Dawson was a coal trimmer on the Titanic. He wasn't in love with a green-eyed Kate Winslet, who wasn't even born then, but with a friend's sister, who convinced him to become a sailor. In the end, they all perished. Another legend claims that every 6 years, radio operators pick up a ghostly SOS signal from the Titanic. The crew of the battleship Theodore Roosevelt first reported this in 1972. A radio operator dug through archives and found notes from colleagues who also received strange transmissions allegedly from the Titanic in 1924, 1930, 1936, and 1942. In April 1996, a Canadian vessel, Quebec, received an SOS signal from the Titanic. Although the official version states that the Titanic was sunk by an iceberg, not everyone believes it. For example, some claim that the Titanic was hit by a German torpedo fired by employees of the company that built the liner to collect insurance. However, this sounds unconvincing, considering how many of the company's employees died on April 14 in 1912. The last surviving passenger of the Titanic died in 2009 at the age of 97. She was 2.5 months old at the time of the shipwreck. The story of the Titanic inspired the creation of numerous films, books, and musical works. The most famous of them, undoubtedly, is the 1997 film Titanic, directed by James Cameron. After the Titanic disaster, a monument dedicated to those who perished was erected. It was located in Southampton, United Kingdom. All items belonging to Titanic passengers recovered after the disaster were sorted and catalogued. However, most of them were never returned to their owners or their families. There were about 20 horses on the Titanic, trained to raise and lower lifeboats. They worked alongside the crew. Many stories of Titanic survivors became legendary. One of them is about Molly Brown, a woman from Colorado who helped other survivors by organizing rescue efforts in a lifeboat. Margaret Brown, known as Unsinkable Molly, endured much. In 1912, she survived the Titanic disaster while aiding others. During World War I, she worked under the threat of death in France, saving soldiers. And in the 1920s, she led people out of a burning hotel in Palm Beach, once again proving her indomitable spirit.
We have information in the KGB that the Titanic did not collide with an iceberg, but with an alien spaceship. The aliens were so eager to humiliate the Pompeii's Brits that they sacrificed one of their own ships